Hello everyone and welcome to episode 6 of the Idle Game Maker CSS course. Today we are going to talk about the CSS Box Model, which helps explain how HTML elements are laid out in our website, or in our case, our Idle Game Maker game. Without properly understanding the box model, you will often be confused when trying to position elements, so make sure to watch until the end. Before we begin, I want to mention that if you want your Idle Game Maker game to be featured in one of my videos, there is a submission form in the description in which you can submit yours. And if you are new here and want to make your own Idle game, you can find the full Idle Game Maker course on my channel. With that said, let's move on to the video. First things first, every single HTML element is essentially just a box of either rectangular or square shape. This is where the box model comes in. In its purest form, the box model is just a simple diagram which tells you how an HTML element is laid out. Let's show how the box model applies to HTML elements on our upgrades. I also highlighted them using inspect elements so that you can see the box model diagram around the HTML elements more clearly. Basically, think of HTML elements as rectangles with 4 layers. The outermost layer is the margin set by the margin property, which is empty space around the specified element. This empty space is measured in pixels, or different measurement values that CSS provides. Here you can see as the margin gets larger, which is signified by the yellow color, the upgrades are pushed away from each other by the empty space. Notice also that the margin can be negative, which will however cause the elements to overlap each other. And just to make it more clear, here's also how the margin being changed looks like without the box model highlights. You can see that it really is just empty space around HTML elements, in this case upgrades. The layer below the margin is the border of the element, set by the border property, which we have already used during this course, so it's pretty self-explanatory. We can change the border width to something like 10 pixels just to make the border layer a lot clearer. Also, this is how it looks like without the box model highlights. We have our border set to be the dashed style, which looks very weird when it's this big, so let's change it to solid. And yeah, now you can see the border layer a lot clearer. The second innermost layer is the padding layer, and padding is just empty space around an element's content inside of any defined borders. As we increase the padding, you can see the content of the upgrade is getting pushed away from the edge of its container, creating empty space around it. The padding, however, cannot have a negative value. If the value is set to be negative, the padding is inherited from the parent element, or it's set to 0 if the parent element has no padding set. Here's also how it looks without the box model highlights to give you a better vision, and as with the margin, you can see that padding is indeed just empty space created around the upgrade icon or the HTML element's content. Many people often confuse padding with margin, but the main difference is that margin is space on the outside, while padding is space on the inside of an HTML element, as can be seen right now. So remember, margin is space on the outside, while padding is space on the inside. The innermost layer is then the content of the HTML element. This can be anything from text to an image, as is the case with our upgrades. And that's all the CSS Box Model is. It just wraps around every single HTML element and is separated into 4 layers: the margin, border, padding, and the content. It becomes a little bit more nuanced when dealing with adding margin and padding to child elements. However, we will exercise that a little bit more in future videos. Today, I just want to add a small amount of margin to my buildings and to my upgrades to make them more evenly spaced out. Alright, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that you see the changes I'm about to make. I'm just going to open up inspect element on my second monitor, so let's just click on some kind of upgrade, and here we have the .upgrade class, and let's just give it a margin of 4 pixels. And now you can see that our upgrades are more evenly spaced out. It definitely looks a lot better than it did previously. I want to do the same thing to our buildings, so let's just right click a building, hit inspect element, and let's now change the .building class, which all buildings have automatically. Let's give them a margin of 4 pixels, right? The same as with our upgrades. But now we have a problem. The margin got applied to all sides of the buildings, right? So now on the right side of the buildings here, it seems like, it just seems a little bit odd, right? Why are they spaced away from the scroll bar here, right? It doesn't look good. So what do we do to fix this? Well, in CSS, you can specify what side of an HTML element to apply margin or even a border and padding to. In this case, I only want the margin to apply to the top side of our buildings. So if I change the property here to not be margin, right, overall, but just be margin top. As soon as I get this shiny out of the way, we can see that this gap on the right side of the buildings is now gone, and because the margin has been applied only to the top side of our buildings. Next up, I think it's about time we improve the look of our resource here. What I want to do with it is I want to add some margin to it, some padding to it, but also make the font size larger. So let's just click inspect element right now. go to the res class, which all resources have by default, right? And let's add, well, first of all, a margin of 10 pixels to our resources, a padding of 5 pixels, and let's just make the font size, well, larger, right? And we can see that with just these three simple properties, right, we elevated the look of our resources quite a lot. And hopefully this made you realize how the CSS Box model can be used to improve the look of your game. Alright, but we must not forget that the changes we have made are temporary because we only made them using the inspect element window, right? If we were to hit refresh, all of our changes would disappear. So in order to make our changes permanent, let's just add them into our style sheet as well. So first let's add the changes we have made to the .res class. So we have added a margin of, I believe it was 10 pixels, yep, a padding of 5 pixels, and a font size of larger. Next up, right above the .res class, we have changed the .upgrade class, and in this one we simply just added the margin, or we have set the margin to be 4 pixels. Next up, let's scroll up a little bit, right, and let's find the .building class, which is right here. And to the buildings, we have simply added a top margin of 4 pixels. And now with those changes made, when we simply just drag and drop our style sheet into filegarden, once it processes and uploads, our changes made are now permanent. Alright, and that's going to be the end of this episode. Thank you very much for watching. This video took a lot longer to make because I was changing up my setup, right? I went from being on this side to, you know, switching to this side, so that the camera angle was a little bit better. I also waited for my pop filter to arrive, right, to improve my sound quality, but I also had to fiddle a lot with the inspect element window and record on double monitors to sync up the footage. So, you know, hit the like button. Okay, no, but on a serious note, if you found this tutorial helpful, you know, like the video, make sure to comment if you have any kind of question, and subscribe. It really helps motivate me and helps support the channel a lot. And if you really enjoy what I do here, feel free to check out my Patreon, where for only $2 a month, you can get some pretty nice perks, such as having your name included in the outro of my videos. So, once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.